Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel, This Fire Life. I hope you guys are doing great. I wanted to do a video today about our relationship patterns and where we learned to expect what we deserve in relationship, right? Or why we think some behaviors are normal and others are not. And I'm going to start by talking about an analogy. Now, actually, analogies are a great way to help make your point or explain to somebody a situation because it kind of forces us out of our subjective experience and into something that we can both understand and both relate to, and then apply those messages. So I use a lot of analogies in my work, but also when I'm teaching or coaching or trying to explain to people a situation that they can't see because they're subjectively in it in an objective way. And the story is about a dog in my building. Now, we have two buildings that face each other. I live over here, and the people I'm talking about live over here. And there's like a little garden path in between. I'm on the fourth floor, they're on the ground floor, so I can actually see down into their garden, which they have outside. Um, which whether I want to or not sometimes happens. So a few years ago, they got a puppy. I do not love dogs. I'm a cat person, but this golden retriever, excuse me, no, Labrador, it was a Labrador, was so cute. I died. Like, it was so cute. Now, this family is mother, father, and two sons. The boys, I always hear they're a big soccer fan. So, they're always noisy. And when there's a soccer game, but I also always kind of hear them like cursing at each other when they were young. So there's, clearly different sort of rules in the house. But when they got this dog, the two sons were a little bit aggressive with it, right? Playing around, grabbing the face of the dog. And I happened to see it one day and I was like, hey, be careful, not only for the dog, but also for them, because if they agitate the dog enough, it was going to bite them. At which point the mother came out and started hysterically screaming at me, telling me to mind my own business. Um, so so I have had the difficult role of watching this dog's treatment over the course of its life. Now, they're not physical with the dog, but he sleeps outside on the balcony. He is not allowed into the house almost ever. And he spends his day barking all day long, barking at dogs that pass by, barking at people that pass by, because their garden is street level and there's like a park behind it. So there's a constant flux of people. But the family, I've doesn't play with him often. The boys do sometimes, but he's never allowed in the house. And this includes in the winter when it's cold outside. When they go away, they'll hire somebody to come and feed him. But this dog spends most of its life curled up on a chair on the balcony, not allowed in the house. Now, this dog, that's his whole experience, right? His entire experience of life. He assumes that this behavior is normal behavior. He hasn't had a different owner before, and so can compare, that owner was way better than this owner. He's been brought up in this environment. So to this dog, that behavior, that way of being treated will seem normal, right? And I always used to look down and be like, this poor dog, like, he doesn't know that there are families who love dogs and who would treat him like a king, who would allow him to sleep on the bed or allow him to, just at least feel the warmth of a family, and be less of sort of like an adjunct piece that they got, which I'm not quite sure why, if they had no intention of integrating it. And so as I was having this thought one day, like, this poor dog, he doesn't know, right? He doesn't know that there could be someone who could treat him better. And I came to this realization while I was saying it, that that's exactly the same for our relationship patterns, right? We are born into a nuclear family. Not all of us. Some, may have been born into chaos or different situations. But because of the way that the brain works, and I talk about this in another video, I'll post a link to it here. The brain is all about survival. Its job is to make sure that you are still alive at the end of the day. And so it tries to patternize everything or archive. So archive things that it has deemed as safe, right? So if you have done a certain acts of behavior and you are still alive, um, then those are known, right? Known challenges that you have already gone through, a known situation, known people. And the brain loves the known as opposed to the unknown. In fact, anxiety comes from trying to know the unknown, and depression comes from an inability to forget the known, or move past it. But whatever it is, that which we know is more comfortable to us. And therefore, we sort of subconsciously gravitate towards it. And this is why you can end up, despite your best intentions, even in therapy and whatever, say, I am not going to date my parents or date my father, or I'm going to have a different relationship, that there are underlying mechanisms that feel comfortable to us that force us to repeat even when we don't want to. I'll give you a perfect example. My father was incredibly emotionally unavailable. He did not enjoy being a parent and was often behind his door, drowning in his books. And so I was like, I'm not going to marry a man like my father. And I made 1,000 different choices. But what I didn't realize is that the common thread across all of them was that I was attracted to men who made me work very hard for their attention, much like my father. So it wasn't like, oh, I'm not going to date an intellectual, which is what I thought it was, or I'm not going to date a man who scorns society and ambition. And that wasn't what it was either. What I was comfortable with, what I was constantly repeating in my relationships, was that this man made me work very hard to get attention and affection. And so that felt normal to me. And when so like that puppy, I had no idea that there were normal relationships, that some men actually show up for you, or partners, whichever gender you lean towards, that they're just because you have been attracting those patterns doesn't mean there isn't something else out there. It's just that that's what you have been accustomed to or trained as normal. You were conditioned without your conscious knowledge as a younger being that this is normal. And so, it seems weird that people would behave differently. And it's interesting because you can see on the internet sometimes, when you have men that are very loving and outwardly kind, then you start to become suspicious because, well, what are they doing? And I'm not saying that all of them are great guys, but when it goes outside of our expected experience, we don't trust it, right? And either we don't know that it exists, or we don't think it exists, or we think that we don't deserve anything different, or it feels uncomfortable. I always, my problem before, having been used to the idea of having to work hard for a man's attention, if someone would pay attention to me, I was not interested, right? Because that wasn't comfortable. It made me uncomfortable because I didn't know that dynamic, and I didn't trust it. And so I wanted to sort of bring this, just a quick video, very quick, to sort of open this concept to you as well. That if you sort of find yourself in repeating patterns, or feeling uncomfortable in situations that are different, it's because you've become accustomed to a way of being, right? Or may not know that there is, or may not believe that there is an alternative. And so one of the other things the brain does is predict. It is actively predicting the future. And so if you meet someone who's nice, right? Who defies your past experience. It can be an inclination, an automatic response to be like, yeah, no, there's something wrong with that person. Automatically shut it down. And this is where the whole concept of beginner's mind comes into play, which is that statistically speaking, every opportunity or every new instance has the exact same probability of being bad or good, right? And if we come at it with our, oh, I already know that's not going to work, to quote Wayne Gretzky, you lose, what is it? Or to not quote Wayne Gretzky, I guess, you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take, right? And so there is some value in not predicting or prejudging when you walk into a situation and assume that there's a possibility that it could be either. It's also important at the same time to get very clear on what your conditioned behavioral slash relationship patterns and subconscious drivers are. Like I said, it took me until I was, I think, in my 40s, to realize that actually the common thread across all the people that I had dated is that I had to work hard for their affection. And that is something I've been able to fix in myself once I was able to get it clear. And so I would invite you, thinking about the puppy, right, that to think that if you're in sort of a difficult situation where you're like, oh, that isn't possible for me, um, to kind of shift that thinking immediately. It may not be possible for you because you've been trained to think that it isn't, or you've been accustomed to a certain modus operandi, let's say, but it doesn't mean that it isn't possible if it's something that you want. There's a possibility towards working towards it. And also to imagine or to believe that the things that you want, you can have or deserve, right? So if you're like, oh, well, there's no good men out there, there's no good women out there, so I'm just gonna settle for this, or better something than nothing, right? Um, I mean, obviously that's people's choices, but if it comes down to a fact of like, no, this is the way it's always been, so I guess that's the way it's always going to be, is not true. And so if you think about sort of the environment in which you were raised, and look at how the relationship dynamics were, right? Did you have a family uh, during your foundational years that was constantly putting you out on the balcony, and only playing with you when they wanted to? Or did you have a family that was warm and inclusive and included you in part of that? So really take a look there to see how some of that early experience may be showing up and may be blocking your happiness in your modern day today. Okay, hope this is clear. Hope it was helpful, and I will see you at the next video.